we got going on this Pelicans coaching search, and just how monumental this is for basketball in New Orleans. This next decision that David Griffin makes. You're a hoop head. You're somebody that you and I go back and forth on all levels of basketball. We definitely feel, we were talking here on the show, we definitely feel like Zion has not been given the support that he needs here in the first 2 years. What do you make of how big this hire is?
Oh, it's huge. You're already working behind the 8 ball. Having I wouldn't say wasted a year. I don't think it was a wasted year, but it's certainly a year that you can't get back. So it's huge. I think everyone feels like this, where we've seen this happen with Anthony Davis before. We don't want to see that happen again. And then you've also seen, like, the other context I keep thinking of is we've seen how successful Monty Williams has been outside of the franchise. So I think you have to be aligned. I think that's the most important part for David Griffin, is to make sure that there's alignment from ownership through the front office, through the head coaching spot, and then the most important part that I think was missing from Stan Van Gundy was alignment between coach and roster. And so everyone's got to be on the same page. That's the hard part of kind of threading this needle. So it's hugely important they get it right. They get it right this time, because while you do have a certain level of player control with the contracts and bird rights and all that stuff that I don't fully understand. I know you can keep those guys around for a while, though, because you can offer more money than anybody else. But the clock's ticking, and you got to get going and capitalize, because you don't get Zions every decade. The Pelicans were lucky to get him, and so they got to make sure they maximize the talent around him while he's there. The thing that gets me is, like, I watch what, like, Atlanta has done with Trae Young, and, like, Atlanta was not. I mean, I know they had some success when they had, like, the 4 All-Stars with Korver and Horford and that kind of crew, and they were kind of seen as overachievers and had the 1 seed that year. But they're not like a franchise with consistent success, but they've built well around Trae Young. And, like, that's the model. You've got to build well around your young superstar. And I'd love to see the Pelicans get there. I don't know. This year was kind of a step back, so hopefully they can right the ship. I do like that it was a decisive move, though, and that they've made the decision and they're moving forward.
Well, I think it shows you just how dire it is over there. Like, they had to make the move. I mean, you look at a model like Memphis, and where the Grizzlies are is built around Ja Morant, and I mean, they brought in a guy like Taylor Jenkins. I had no idea who Taylor Jenkins was, and I said that I don't mind at the NBA's opening press conference of a head coach if I don't know who my guy is. I mean, I can't stand these retreads that you bring in that you expect to get production from. Cody Worsham, who is the sports digital media reporter over at LSU, he is also the communications director in crisis and strategic management. Cody, and there's a lot of new things that are happening over at LSU, including a sit-down that you had with Jack Marucci yesterday that I thought was very, very cool, that you can find on the latest podcast that you have published. But Jack Marucci is a staple of LSU and widely considered within not only the LSU community, but the sports community as one of the brightest minds as far as innovation goes. Talk about what he's working on here, the latest project that he's working on here at LSU.
Yeah, so the news with Jack is he's been moved into a new position. Let's see if I get the title right, because our titles at LSU seem to be getting longer and longer as you just touched on. I noticed that. He's the director of performance innovation. But basically what that means is, Jack's been the head athletic trainer for 25 years, and they're going to take the athletic training portion, the taping of ankles and the, assessing of injuries off his plate, and let him focus on the innovation and the work that he's done in that space. And I think a lot of people are familiar with a sliver of that work. The example that I wrote about in 2019 was the eye tracking technology they did with the receivers, where they had to catch 10,000 balls over the summer, and they tracked their eyes when they were catching passes and figured out which guys were right eye dominant, which guys were left eye dominant, how that affected, what routes they were best at. But Jack's done a lot of projects like that. We talked about on the podcast that you referenced last year when Jay Ward blocked the field goal against Arkansas to sort of seal that game. That was something that they had studied with some some motion tracking technology and some reaction time testing that Jay Ward was the fastest player on the team coming off of the edge on that particular side. And so as they were preparing for Arkansas, they noticed on the left side of their field goal protection a little bit of delay there from the protection side. And so they thought, we can put Jay Ward there and he's going to get one. And if you remember that game, I think he almost got an extra point right before that. And then he came and got a field goal at the end. So it's basically, finding data-driven solutions, technology solutions. And Jack, whether it's been building a bat company from scratch or we talk about like this project he picked up over COVID, like carving these wooden bowls that look like football stadiums. They're like little mini wooden replicas. He's just got a solution for everything, and he's curious. And he's good at recognizing patterns or trends and then figuring out ways to measure things the right way, which is a really valuable skill. Like, for example, when you measure an athlete's performance in football, like typically we've used the 40-yard dash or the vertical, and all that's great. But LSU realized and Jack realized, like, I want to be able to measure, like, how quickly can a guy respond to a stimulus? How quickly can a guy change direction? How quickly can a guy make an adjustment? And so they partnered with this company called S2 Cognition, where they, like, study cognitive processing. And one of the things we talk on the podcast, you can see us going through the numbers on the YouTube version of it, like how Joe Burrow, before the season, before his breakout record-setting historic season, they did the cognitive testing, and they were like, this guy's about to have a huge season because his cognitive testing is off the charts. Like, his ability to improvise is off the charts. His ability to change direction quickly, off the charts. His ability to not be impulsive, to stay with his decisions, off the charts. So it's measuring things that maybe we could see with our eyes before and recognize, but not find a measurement for. And that's important because if you can measure something, you can adjust it. You can work on a weakness. You can shore up a strength. And so that's going to be Jack's focus, is a lot of those kind of projects. We talk about some specifics, some stuff he's doing with the receivers, the linebackers, offensive line over this summer. But it's going to make an impact. It already has in his time here, and now it's going to be his full-time thing, and it's going to make a huge difference for LSU football.
There's a lot of whispers about Ernie Adams with the Patriots, and it seems like Jack Marucci is kind of built in that mold of operating between the margins. Is this something that other schools have in their facilities? Do other teams have a Jack Marucci? Because it feels like the Patriots were the only teams with an Ernie Adams.
Yeah, no, there's only one Jack Marucci. There may be someone in a similar-ish role. I don't think there is. I think this is kind of a first. And the good thing is, Jack's going to be applying this work across the entire athletic department and all of our teams. He's still going to be housed in football ops, and it's still going to be a primarily football operation. But, sort of the natural evolution of this is being able to take what they're doing with football and applying it elsewhere. So, for example, one of the things I talked about was the reaction time testing. One of the guys who tested off the charts on that was obviously Jamar Chase, right? Well, they did it with beach volleyball, and they found out that Kristen Nuss, who just finished up the undefeated season and is now playing professionally, had like Jamar Chase level reaction times. And they found like some weaknesses. They worked on those. They found some strengths, built those up. And so another example is like after the eye tracking technology, me and Jack had a conversation. I think this was on a podcast. I can't remember. But I talked to him about I'd worked with a shooting coach in basketball once that he had tested my eye dominance. I had never thought about that before as a shooter in basketball, but he told me, hey, you're actually right eye dominant, not left eye dominant. Move the ball in your shooting pocket a little bit to the side so you can clear up your dominant eye. And Jack thought that was amazing, brought it to the women's basketball team. They did some work on it, and they saw some percentage increases with their free throw shooting. So it's taken these ideas that, other times where he would have been treating injuries or doing athletic training. Well, now he's able to expand these ideas within football and then outside the athletic department. Look, if there's anyone else in the country doing that in college football and college sports, I don't know about it. But the real advantage is Jack himself. Like, he's a brilliant thinker. He sees things that other people don't. He figures out ways to quantify things that other people can't quantify. And then he presents it this is the most important part. He's got such a good relationship with the coaches and the players that he can present that information to them in a way they could use it. Like it's no good to have the information and not be able to do anything with it. It's no good to have data and be like, hey guys, like, hey, Jordy Ward, you're fast coming off this edge. Okay, great. Like, how do I apply that? He's able to go to the position coach. He's able to go to Greg McMahon and say, hey, I may want to try this. Or the coaches will come to him and say, hey, like, Jack, I'm having Corey Raymond comes in and says, hey, we're having trouble with the safeties tracking the ball in the air. What can we do? And they figure out a solution. They figure out a way to test it. They figure out a way to measure it. And then they figure out a way to fix it. So it's a collaborative process, and Jack's the best at it.
You talk a lot about cognitive testing, eye tests, stuff like that. Is there any resistance from type of old coaches where it's, no, we're going to do deadlifts, squats, lift heavy weights, stuff like that, like the old traditional way?
No, there's not. You know, Tommy Moffitt's a big driver of this. I think the way they got connected with S2, I think it was S2. It may be one of the other companies they work with, but I think it was S2, was through Tommy Moffitt. They had a connection with that company, I think, from a previous institution or a previous working relationship. And so that was the initial connection. And, you know, a lot of schools use this kind of technological stuff, but I think the difference is the question that you just asked, and sort of what I teased in my last answer, is that there's this sort of universal buy-in because everyone trusts Jack, because he's earned that trust over 25 years. And so they take what he says to the bank and apply it. And it's across positions. It's, you know, Greg McMahon is not a new school, 30-something coach. He's been around for a while, but he's willing to adapt and change some things based on what Jack gives him and presents him in terms of data. There's another thing that me and Jack talked about field goal kicking, where he noticed something about, and he did this intensive study on, you know, which hash a kicker was on, and in what quarter of the game they were on that hash. And basically, if you go to the Florida game, Jack felt really confident in Cade York, because I think he was, I'm going to get the details wrong, but he was in an advantageous spot on the field in terms of the hashes for his long kick. And then when Florida stepped up to kick it, I think he was on the right hash, and Jack had noticed in the fourth quarter, the guys on the right hash struggle more kicking it, right? And so it's little things that we all kind of, maybe we don't all see, but some of us see, or some of it's intuitive, or some of it is just a gut feeling. But he takes that gut feeling and dives deeper, and then gives you data to either confirm it or to disprove it, and then gives you a path to apply it. And that makes all the difference. I mean, there's a million stories. Like Clyde Edwards-Helaire went to Jack one day and said, hey, I love the angle route. Can we test it? And they tested Clyde's ability in the angle route to see the ball, to change direction. They saw something special. Steve Ensminger, again, not a new school coach, definitely more of an old school coach, said, yeah, I'll do that. I trust you, Jack. I trust you, Clyde. They put it in the offense, and it was a huge success. So it's that trust and buy-in that I think is really special.
Wow.
This doesn't sleep.
I mean,
That's awesome.
he's the coolest cat in the room too. He's like the quiet, cool dude in the corner that you go and talk to, and you're like, I mean, who knew?
What else do you
Who
know?
knew? This guy's
What aren't you
unbelievable.
telling us?
Cody Worsham, he is the host of Tigers Win, the Boot Up and Hay Fightin' podcast that you can all check out at lsusports.net. Some of those conversations here recently have been with the new additions to the LSU football staff, and one thing is for certain is that Orgeron's group has become, you and I were talking a little bit about Stan Van Gundy and his replacement and the ability to be able to communicate to these guys at this level. It seems like, if nothing else, that they have gotten very good at the levels of communication between coach and player and the new guys that they have brought in. What has stood out to you in your conversations with the new faces inside of the coaching community for LSU football?
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Those guys are really, really sharp. You know, the most recent ones that I talked to were on the defensive side with Durante Jones, Andre Carter, and Blake Baker. And, you know, for me, this is me coming from like a selfish content perspective, and y'all will get this because of what y'all do, but you're always looking for guys who are engaging and can carry a conversation and can talk about things beyond football. And obviously you want to tie it back into football, but you want to kind of branch out a little bit. And all those guys are just so, you know, well-rounded and have interests outside of football and can connect to you in a human way. Like, if they can sit down with me, a 32-year-old, you know, father of two, and, you know, kind of I would classify myself as a pretty boring dude. Like, they can sit down with me and have a great conversation and connect with me on a few topics that I care about. I know they can sit down in a living room or in a coach's room or position room with 18 to 21-year-olds and connect with them over football and their experiences and their interests. So it's a special group. That there's definitely a feeling of youth and tying in with some of the stuff we were talking about with Jack, of innovation and willing to try things and willing to be open-minded. But most importantly, I think there's just like a closeness and like you mentioned, a communication. They connect with people in a really special way, and I've heard that from everybody. I've heard it from players. I've heard it from other coaches. I've heard it from administration. Like they kind of fit right in. If nothing else, it's good. It's good positive energy. It's good. It's good. Team chemistry. It's getting everyone on the same page. But I think there's more value too. I think they know football. I think they know how to coach. I think they have new ideas, because I think that kind of thinking where you can be open-minded and sit down and have a conversation with anybody from any walk of life, I think that makes you, I think that reflects a certain type of thinking that applies to football too, and being willing to adapt and being able to recognize problems and find solutions. So I'm excited to see him in play. The biggest question is his experience, but I think there's so many other experienced minds around, whether at the analyst level or Coach O. Obviously, he's been in the coaching game for almost 40 years now. There's plenty of experience there. I think just some fresh ideas and some youth and some novelty. I think it's injected some real energy over there.
Neil Farrell just woke up and said and tweeted, "Wait, I went to sleep with the Hawks getting blown out. I woke up and the Hawks won." How? We had the same feeling here this morning, Neil. Don't feel bad. I said the same thing when I woke up. You had a great tweet remembering Paul Mainieri when he decided to step down a couple of weeks ago, or just over a week ago, and made the announcement that he was retiring. You covered him. You have worked alongside him over the last couple of years. How did that announcement hit you?
Yeah, it hit me a little bit different because I was a little involved behind the scenes, trying to plan out his press conference and the announcement and rolling it out and that sort of thing. And the reason it hit me different is because when you're on the outside, or I've been on the outside covering the team and the media, and maybe you have a little bit of skepticism, or maybe you hear something and you're like, well, that's not the real story. And with Paul Mainieri, that just from the day he arrived at LSU to the day that he announced his retirement and his final day coaching for LSU, that was never the case. Like, he told you what he felt. He told you the truth, the unvarnished truth. I remember the day that he was going to announce his retirement, and we were just kind of going over, hey, talking point, I wasn't giving him anything. He was just kind of talking through it with me. And he was just so appreciative, and almost the humility of, like, I don't want to make a big deal out of this. Like, this isn't about me. It was all really authentic, and just, more specifically, like his relationship with Bill Franquez, for example, who's been his SID since he got at LSU. And he was just he kept saying thank you to Bill, and Bill, if there's anything else I can do for you, let me know. It was just this servant's mentality, this humility, this grace, this class that I think we all see it in some form or fashion, but we also get it mixed up with our sports opinions. Oh, he should have changed pitchers here, or he should have won the national championship this year, or he should have done this thing differently. But when you step away from that and just look at the humanity, I mean, just what a representative, and what a classy, caring, passionate man who loved the game and really respected the game of baseball. Just respected it, loved it, cherished it every day he was there, never took a day for granted, and treated people around him really well. If we get, whoever replaces him, if we get somebody that loves LSU as much as Paul Mainieri and loves the game as much as Paul Mainieri, we're going to be in great shape. So, me and Paul weren't super close, but we were, he treated me so well in every interaction that we had, and made me feel like I was really important to the work that he was doing. And if he did that for me, I know he did it for everybody else around LSU. So he's just a great guy. I could talk about him all day. He's the best. I'm gonna miss him. But congratulations to him, obviously, on a great career, because he had the career that everyone would dream of. Like, if you told a coach that's 22 years old today, hey, and getting into coaching, hey, this is going to be your career. You're going to win 1,500 games in a College World Series and work at LSU, and this is the place your career is going to take you, everyone would jump on it, like no hesitation. So I think it's important to keep that perspective and just remember what a great coach he was and what a great representative of LSU in Louisiana he was.
Have you had a chance to, I know you're very busy during the day, but have you had a chance to get over in the afternoons and catch any of these pickup games that I hear are going on in the practice arena with this new basketball roster?
So I haven't been over there yet, but now that you're putting it in my ear, I might send a couple text messages and get over there. But I've talked to some people and had some conversations, and in the spirit of not oversharing, I can tell there's some real excitement about the makeup of this team, both mentally and sort of their approach to the game, but also physically. Like one of the conversations I had, and I'm sure you've had this conversation, Jordy, was like how Efton Reed carries himself, like physically, but also like the way he works. But he doesn't look like a 7-footer. He moves like a 6'4", 6'5" guy, but he's 7 foot, and he's got some skill to him, and he's got some athleticism to him. Adam Miller, the way that just physically he's ready, like they don't have to work on him. He's ready to go, and has that similar kind of work approach to the game. So I think they've got a good balance of sort of the physical balance of the team. There's really no gaps to fill, as there's been in the past roster wise with certain body types. They've got every kind of body type they need, but also there's a real workmanlike approach to this team. And I need to go see them because the things I've heard are really good, but I want to see with my own eyes.
Cody Worsham from LSU. Check out all the podcasts. They're easy to find at lsusports.net, as they are great conversations with everything that's going on at LSU, whether it's the new faces on the football staff, Jack Marucci in his new role, or just catching up with what's happening on campus. Cody Worsham is a great outlet for that over at lsusports.net and on social media. Thank you as always. We'll talk soon, man.
All right, y'all. Thanks.
All right, man. There's Cody Worsham checking in this morning